Hello humans, Master Dinnerflex here, bringing you the low quality content you deserve, and today I'll be going over what I consider the Exorsister engine, or Exorsister, whatever. But the reason I wanted to go over this is because I noticed very quickly when reading over the cards, as its own deck, Exorcisters can't really function. Now, this isn't because of the fact that their card effects aren't powerful enough. It's because their entire design is dependent on your opponent. It doesn't really matter how powerful their effects are. Like, it can negate and destroy pretty much anything your opponent tries to do. That doesn't matter because it requires your opponent to do something and then have setup that punishes you for that. And if you don't believe me, I didn't describe Exorcisters, I described Psy-frames. So, obviously, over time we have watched this strategy fail over and over again. You can't really expect your opponent to always do something for you, especially when you, like, normal summon one of the level 4s and then wait for your opponent to trigger an effect. That's not a real strategy. Now, obviously, they could probably fix this because they still have cards to announce. And what they would need to fix is effectively a dark deal where it changes an effect to something else, such as target a card in either graveyard and banish it. Then that would obviously help that strategy stand on its own. But for right now, I think this could actually work as an engine better than a deck. And even if we get that dark deal-like card, this could actually just be a very solid engine. And I will explain. Because right now what you're seeing on screen is a card in the deck called Exorsister Vadis. You pay Scout stats, special summon from the deck, one Exorsister monster, and then an Exorsister monster that lists that very specific name in its text. But shuffle them into the deck during the end phase. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Exorsister monsters. This is fine, because this is a spell speed 2 normal trap. Normal trap means it's very searchable with, like, Lilith and Trap Trick, but more importantly, since it's chainable, unlike the rest of the Exorsister deck that literally tells your opponent, hey, don't special summon or move cards from the graveyard, this one doesn't tell your opponent that. So if you're playing like a normal control deck, like here's a good one, maybe a Shadal or Dogmatica deck, or an Invoke deck. Your opponent has back row, obviously, but that could be an Imperm. That could be a Schism. And while your opponent is trying to play around Winda, they're like, okay, this Revival card's going to have a huge effect if he tries to summon Winda. If they activate, let's say, literally Monster Reborn, you chain this. And then this will resolve first to special summon what I think are the best 2 targets right now. But obviously this can be up to change. And that is Sophia and Elaine. Both of these cards have effects that when they're summoned, you draw a card in a specific way. This one, I believe, is you draw a card if you control another Exorsister. And this one, you can put an Exorsister from your hand to the bottom of the deck, then draw a card. So they both have draw effects, which is nice. But those effects will activate in a new chain, and in that same new chain, because your opponent moved a card from the graveyard while these were on the field, you can use their effects to XC summon during your opponent's turn with each of them. Now, this is what I like about this strategy. Now, I don't actually believe the stats on this one are correct. But these are custom cards right now, so I can't really use anything else. I think both of the stats on these are wrong. But, so just ignore the stats. But this one, when it is XE summoned during your opponent's turn, or XE summoned using an Exorsister on this turn, quick effect, you can target a card your opponent controls or in their graveyard and banish it. And this one, during the turn it's XE summoned with an Exorsister, it is Abyss Dweller. So, you quite literally, once their card effect that moves a card from their graveyard resolves, you go ahead and special summon both of these, you banish a card they control, you Abyss Dweller them, and then, during the next turn, you'll go into your next turn, this one has an effect to detach to search another Vadis, and this one has an effect to detach to bounce a card. You will go ahead and do what you want, probably poke with both of these, and then main phase 2, you can overlay these 2 unnumbered XZ monsters for F-Zero, and then Draco Future, and if you're like, nah, I'm going to be extra cute, you could also do Zeus. So this one singular trap card banished an opponent's card, Abyss Dweller to your opponent, searched another engine card, drew either 1 card or 2 cards and put 1 back, and then you either end on you Draco Future or 2 use Zeus, and then you, at the end of all that, you can do it again. That is stupid. That is actually stupid. However, you might be saying, well, what if you're forced to use this? Or let's actually put it in a better example. Your opponent normal summons Fractal, and you're like, okay, he has to banish to use the effect. If my opponent wants to play Tri-Brigade at all this turn, they have to banish. And let's say you summon your 2 things, and they decide, I'd rather end my turn than let this happen. During the end phase, they get shuffled in the deck, and yeah, you don't get all these cards, but that doesn't matter because your opponent didn't play that turn. And it also doesn't matter because it's not like your Garnets now go to the grave. They go back in the deck, so when you get another Vadis, they're still ready to go, meaning every single one of these you get is valid. So, that's insane. But also, I didn't mention at all of these XCs are theoretically generic. Like, all of them have an effect that any deck can use. So the one that's a bounce, that effect is valid in any XE. But the effects on the opponent's turn and the turn they're summoned, they need an Exorsister. But this one is the one I want to mention because it's generic rank 4, but its generic effect is that it searches any Exorsister spell or trap card, meaning Vadis. So if you just play a generic rank 4 engine, like here's a funny one. You could probably come up with better generic rank 4 engines than this. But if you come up with a generic rank 4 engine, such as, I guess, this, you can really access this in any rank 4 deck you want to. And then this is very, very powerful. And I think this is how you should approach this deck. I don't think it's a pure standalone deck on its own. I think it is a very, very powerful engine that is just waiting to find something else to be used in. Now, I don't know what the future is going to hold for this deck, because, again, they haven't got every single card revealed, but even if they get a card that makes this deck stand on its own 2 feet, what is stopping you from just playing this engine in a bunch of decks? Is there actually anything preventing you from doing that? Maybe the Garnets, maybe you are playing a combo deck and a weird set might telegraph this card to your opponent, maybe, but I don't know. I actually think this engine is kind of formidable, and I want to see how well this does. But yep, that's going to be it for me. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I really hope I brought some insight on this deck, and I hope you guys understand that anytime we get a deck that's meant to counter the opponent and the entire playstyle is to counter the opponent, those decks don't work. Like, those standalone decks don't really work because nothing is ever going to force your opponent to do something. even in the sense of Psyframes, where they have a tool for every single thing that the opponent could do, your opponent could just play as basic as possible, and most of your cards won't trigger, and then you just lose to straight up battle damage on what could have easily just been a normal monster. And that is the same kind of issue I see with this deck, but I think with this engine, you can actually catch a lot of people off guard, because this doesn't telegraph it to your opponent, and even if they're trying to play around this card, that means they're not trying to play around your actual deck. But yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master Dinnerflex will take your soul.